My name is Adami. I'm the Chairman and Managing Director of SAB Limited. I spoke this morning about competition and what it's going to take to win in the 21st century. Our aspiration is to become a model 21st century competitor, and we believe that we will do that by winning with South African society, winning with South African retailers, and winning with the consumer. At this point in our history, the subject of competition is highly relevant to virtually anyone doing business in South Africa. And we believe our situation reflects a dynamic that many South Africans are facing or will face. As most of you know, in the past few years, we've been confronted with our first truly serious competitor in decades, as our long-term partner suddenly decided to become our rival, as one of the great global giants, Heineken, has joined forces with another global powerhouse, Diageo. But what might surprise you is that the emergence of a strong competitor has also been very good for SAB. Why do I say that? Because the disruption was indeed fundamental, and because the game did indeed change overnight on us. We were forced to take a very hard look at our business. And when we took that hard look, we quickly came to some fairly obvious conclusions about some substantial changes we had to make if we were to compete and win. The overall conclusion is that the main effect of the emergence of a strong competitor should be that it simply accelerates the pace at which we become the kind of company we need to become anyway. At SAB, we believe that the Competition Act is a very thoughtful piece of legislation that does a remarkable job of balancing a variety of important objectives. And we believe it demonstrates substantial wisdom in setting out the best policies for South Africa during the critical period of our history as a truly democratic nation and as a serious economic player in the global arena. And so to begin with today, we thought it might be useful to take a quick look at those 6 objectives of the Competition Act and use those objectives as a means of evaluating SAB. The first objective is to promote efficiency, adaptability, and development of the economy. Now, this is the broadest of the objectives, and it almost serves as an umbrella statement of intent. But if you were going to capture objective number 1 in a nutshell, you would say that it's about balancing 2 things: the need for competitiveness within the context of the global economy, and the need to ensure that economic growth for the country translates into maximum economic progress for its people. The second objective of the Act is to promote and provide consumers with competitive prices and products and choices. This is one of my favorite objectives because it showcases one of my favorite facts, a fact that almost always surprises everyone that we share it with. And that fact is this: in real terms, beer is roughly half the price it was 35 years ago. That's right. Adjusted for inflation, the average price of a South African beer, or that a South African pays for a beer today, is only slightly more than half the price they would have paid 3.5 decades ago. Our drive to continually give the consumer better and better value, consistently trailing the rate of inflation year after year, decade after decade, is one of the big reasons beers performed so well versus wine and spirits, with beer expanding its share of the overall alcoholic category from a mere 6% share in the early 60s to a 57% share today. The third objective is to promote employment and advance the social and economic welfare of South Africans. Now, the most obvious way to measure this is to look at our employment numbers. We directly employ some 9,500 South Africans across the country, and we're proud of that. But when you consider that independent analysis and economic impact studies have determined that our business accounts for more than 3% of the South African economy, generating more than 50 billion rand in economic value per annum, then you really need to look beyond direct employment numbers. for every person we employ directly, at least another 10 people are employed indirectly. However, the induced multiplier effect is a lot greater, something like 40 times. The fourth objective of the Competition Act is to expand opportunities for South African participation in world markets and recognize the role of foreign competition in the Republic. Now, on the first part of that objective, we technically don't have much to offer, at least in the literal interpretation of the intention, because beer is fundamentally a local business, where local brands dominate, and importing is highly expensive, because beer is costly to transport. But here is what we have exported. Reputation. The reputation called South African business. So that's the first part of Objective 4, where our contribution is largely intangible. But I'm afraid our contribution to the second part has been quite tangible and substantial. The second part is about promoting foreign investment here in South Africa with the intent of intensifying competition here with local companies. And somewhat ironically, SAB literally enabled foreign competition by partnering with Amstel and Heineken decades ago when they were actually still separate companies, providing the distribution and marketing support required to build these new brands then. And that is one of the big reasons why they became such a formidable competitor, literally overnight, because they did not have to go through many years of the costly investment to build these new brands. So while we did not do it out of benevolence, and we can indeed say that we have done more than our part in helping attract foreign entries into our sector. The fifth objective is to ensure that small and medium-sized enterprises have an equitable opportunity to participate in the economy. This is where the nature of our business works very much in our favor, because beer is very much of a universally appealing grassroots product, a product that must often pass through several hands to find its way to the consumer. But the fact is that our products provide a substantial portion of cash flows to thousands of small businesses across South Africa. The sixth and final objective is to promote a greater spread of ownership, in particular to increase the ownership stake for historically disadvantaged persons. Now, to be honest with you, SAB were the early innovators in this area, with multiple initiatives in the country going back over many decades, including our efforts to facilitate the very first black-owned license, the whole scheme of owner-drivers and appointed distributors, the whole facilitation of entrepreneurship generally in the industry, and the procurement of and establishment of small businesses to supply our business. But last year we actually made a big breakthrough with our BBBEE deal we call Zenzele, a transaction that created more than 40,000 new shareholders in our company, more than 40,000 historically disadvantaged South Africans who now have an ownership stake in SAB. The deal was considered to be so innovative in creating truly broad-based on ownership that Dealmakers magazine rated it South Africa's deal of the year. Some of you are more skeptical people in the room are thinking, that's all very nice, Adami, but it's easy to be a good citizen when you don't have any real competition breathing down your neck. So how are you going to behave now that you have a very tough competitor trying to take your business away from you? So the question we asked ourselves is this: what would it take for us to inspire our fellow South Africans to cheer for us right here in South Africa? The answer is actually both simple and obvious. SAB must work in the best interests of South Africa by working in the best interests of South African consumers, retailers, and society. Let's start with the big picture. Let's start with society, because our approach with society exemplifies a basic philosophy that drives everything else we do as well. That philosophy is that we do not consider South Africa an important market amongst our global portfolio of geographies. We consider South Africa home, In fact, we don't consider South Africa a market at all. We are indeed out to win the loyalty of retailers, big and small, but through the commercial side of our business. Specifically, we are to win the hearts and minds of our retailers by providing value and service that is clearly superior to what our competitors provide. Be it the largest chain store or the tiniest little tavern in the country deserves to make a fair profit for their effort. And profit in the retail industry is around margin and stock turn. That may seem like an obvious concept, but we believe South African retailers are seeing an increasingly divergent approach from SAB and our competitor brand house. But what about the South African consumer? Well, that's an incredibly important aspect for us, because if we can win with consumers, it makes the rest of our work much, much easier. So what are we doing to make that happen? Once again, the answer is fairly simple and obvious. We've got to win with South African consumers by providing high-quality products in the form of distinctive beers expressed as exciting brands at good value. Let's start with high-quality products. We're very proud of the quality of our products, but we also know that this is another dimension of our business where people don't necessarily assume that big means better. But the quality advantage that comes from being big are not limited solely to the brewing process. Our size also gives us a big advantage when it comes to distribution. As most of you know, a huge factor in the quality of beer is freshness. The fresher the beer, the better it tastes. So the shorter the time that passes between when a beer is brewed, once it's brewed, and when it's consumed, the better the quality of the beer. Consequently, the fast turn rate of brands, big brands like Carling Black Label, Hansa Pilsner, Castle, make it more likely that consumers get to taste these brands at their very best. And that leads me to the second element of winning with consumers, distinctive beers. While we seek a uniformly high level of quality for all of our beers, we seek to make sure that each beer has its own distinctive profile when it comes to taste, aroma, color, and mouthfeel. At SAB, the size of our portfolio enables us to provide a range of beers with unique physical characteristics that appeal to different tastes and different desires. For instance, take the most popular or the best performing premium beer in South Africa today, Castle Light. Castle Light is brewed to be extremely refreshing, something South African beer drinkers are appreciating more and more each day, particularly at a summer's braai or an afternoon on the golf course. Contrast that flavor profile with, for example, say, Carling Black Label. Now, most South African beer drinkers can tell you that Black Label has a slightly higher content level. But often what gets overlooked is that Black Label's alcohol content is just one part of a carefully created balance of characteristics that makes it one of the most truly balanced, highly nuanced beers in the world. In fact, it's one of the best tasting beers in the world by any standard. In fact, we have a strong belief that the personality of the brand must flow directly from the physical characteristics of the beer, the physical distinctiveness of the beer. And we believe that every beer brand must stand for something relevant and compelling. So are we where we need to be? No, of course not. But we are moving, and we're moving fast. Competition is indeed good for SAB, because competition truly is accelerating our efforts to become the company we need to become anyway. South Africa deserves to enjoy the benefits of true competition, and we are determined to become the company that provides the very best choices. Because if we don't want to become the company of the past in South Africa, we have to work as hard as hell to become the company, the beer company of the future in South Africa. And yes, we are committed to doing what it takes to inspire all South Africans to cheer for us right here at home. So thank you for taking the time to hear what I had to say, and I'd like to now open up the floor to hear what you guys have got to say. Thank you, everyone.